Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. I'm back with another how to draw video. People for years have been requesting a video about foreshortening, which is kind of like when someone's stretching their arm out toward you, various things like that. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. To keep things short though, I'm going to go ahead and do rough guidelines for the figure, and in fact go pretty far along towards drawing everything except for the foreshortened arm, which I will do all real time. So let's go ahead and get in those first rough guidelines. All right, so we've got the basic guidelines in place, and if you want more details on this particular pose, go ahead and request that in the comment section. Maybe I can do a separate video that goes through more of that stuff in real time. But for now, let's go ahead and get into drawing this foreshortened arm. The first thing I want to do is get some guidelines in place for where the hand is going to be. This hand is really coming right out, sort of like she's reaching out toward the viewer and saying, here, take me by the hand. Let me lead you across the meadows to the beautiful cherry blossom trees. It's kind of ridiculous compared to last week. It was like muscle man with testosterone. And now it's, yes, beautiful falling sakura petals. In any case, we give you variety here on the Mark Curley channel. I'm going to begin by drawing the rough guidelines here for this hand, and it's not going to look like a hand at first. I should warn you, it'll look like a weird, I don't know, almost football type shape. It's hard to describe what this is, but for me, I want to get the base of where the fingers are going to come to a stop, basically, and this is going to be the where the palm rests, and then I'm going to come down here and make a very wide kind of curving line. Curves down like this, and then curves across. It almost actually, instead of a football, I should say it almost looks like a giant eye in a certain way. It looks like a giant eye shape. Maybe that'll help you remember it better. But yeah, if you can replicate this shape, and again, this only applies to this particular hand that I'm going to show you how to draw today, but it's a lot of the principles of foreshortening will apply to a variety of outstretched hands. But let's go ahead and make a little more sense of this actual hand shape. And to do that, let's go ahead and get the rest of the arm in before we go any further. So this is her shoulder, right? And I'm having these lines come down at kind of parallel to one another. And as we get down here, this is when the lines will actually start to come out and make the arm appear wider in the forearm section, which is, of course, the opposite of reality. But because the arm is coming towards us, it actually looks as if it's getting bigger, to suggest that it's coming closer. And so I get this line down here, maybe have this come out a little bit more. Now we're going to go ahead and get a second line in here, and this, believe it or not, is going to be the base of the fingers. Actually, if you've started to look at this as an eye, it's kind of spooky because this line also starts to look like the iris of like an evil bad guy eye. I hadn't even thought of that. It's like the perfect mnemonic device. Does everyone else see it? It's sort of like this is an eye, and then this is the evil, angry bad guy eye. But we are now going to perform the minor miracle of trying to transform this into a hand. Let's go ahead and start with the thumb. Okay, so I'm going to come over here, and we are going to, I noticed that when artists draw the thumb, they often want to give quite a lot of definition to the main, what do you call that, the last digit of the thumb. They tend to give it actually more definition than it has even in real life. And by definition I just mean sort of giving it more shape, more clarity in the shape. So getting that in there, then we move on to drawing the sort of base of the thumb, or I don't know if that would be the first digit of the thumb. And at this stage, I can move back, and using this first upper guideline, this is going to be where the base of the palm, we begin to indicate the shape of the base of the palm. So kind of an unusual shape that's going on here. It's coming, there's a big lump right here, which is sort of that big thick base of the thumb part of the palm. And then coming down here, it gets a little less pronounced, and it's going to be a little more obscured by the rest of the hand. Now, a lot of times artists will take this section of the hand and sort of define that, use that as a way of defining the shape. Now, this becomes quite tricky because this hand is really stretching out toward us. We're not seeing the whole palm. We're seeing, in perspective. I mean, that's what this whole foreshortening exercise is about. We need to imagine what would this palm look like as it's facing toward us. And this is where we get to drawing the fingers, which is finally going to make this start to look like an actual hand. So let's start over here with the pinky. I think that's maybe the best, safest place to begin. And in a certain way, it almost looks like a miniature thumb from this point of view. Going to make this go back like so. And the fingers break into, of course, three. They don't break. I hope they don't break. Don't break your fingers. For this exercise, we must maintain the health of your fingers. They divide, I suppose I should say, into three basic, chunks. But I find when I'm drawing sometimes that I don't want to get too distracted by indicating each and every line of the finger. And so what I do, and it's kind of a cheat, but I will just do the outer digit, give that some definition, and then almost pretend like those other two are a single digit, especially from this point of view. And now we're getting down, I mean, that was the pinky, this was this other finger. Now these fingers are going to have to get considerably larger as they reach, ever closer to you. I mean, we're trying to do almost like one of these 3D movie fingers pointing at you effects. And so that's why we start to exaggerate, maybe give ourselves a little artistic license here as this finger really begins to point almost directly toward us. And again, see how I do my trick anyway, is to kind of fake it as two parts rather than trying to do each and every division of the finger. And finally, this last one is going to be coming more or less straight toward us to create this illusion of depth of the hand, reaching out, inviting us to prance across the meadow in the falling cherry blossom petals. If you ever have the chance to view the cherry blossoms during that season when they're in bloom, they really are quite beautiful. I'm making a big joke out of it, but seriously, people, they're very beautiful. We shouldn't be mocking the cherry blossom trees. In any case, I think we're kind of getting to the point where we're done with this. And notice how this first line that we had made that was sort of like the iris, this becomes the outer edge of the, so the lower edge of the palm. And I'm going to go in here and erase away some of those guidelines. It doesn't matter how many videos I do, everyone says, this is the first time I've ever seen you erase. The people who've been watching me for years will say, he erases in almost every video, people. I don't know what you're talking about. In any case, we're kind of getting to the basic shape that we need here. And it's time, I think, to move on to drawing some of the wrinkles on this sleeve. And there's no, set in stone way to do this. My feeling is that you're going to have a variety of let's erase this. Speaking of erasing, let's get this out of the way because we don't need it anymore. You're going to have a variety of roughly horizontal-ish lines. I always find that you get wrinkles near the cuff and wrinkles near the elbow region. And the other areas are comparatively wrinkle-free. But the main thing here, I think, for getting that sort of foreshortening effect is that you've got that base, those base lines, those rough initial guidelines in the right formation so that it looks like it's getting bigger and bigger as it reaches out toward you. And then just, maybe for those of you who are sticklers for detail, I'll go ahead and indicate the final digits of the fingers there. But I do think that the very end digits, is that right? Digits? Are these called? It wouldn't be a Mark Curley video if I wasn't questioning at least one of the vocabulary words. Are these things called like digits, or are they finger pieces? And if you get really into the detail of it, you may even find that there's sort of like skin or flesh between each finger, and you're seeing the lower section there. But I think we're ready to maybe go on to final lines here. And maybe I will come back and say a word or two about shading. But we're going to go ahead and do final line work with my trusty black Prismacolor. And then I'll come back to do some shading. Alright, so we've got most of the final line work done, and what I'm doing right now, again with my black Prismacolor, is thickening these lines around the fingers. That's sort of a classic technique of making objects appear closer, and this goes way beyond just manga into all kinds of art forms. You'll see people using a thick border as a sort of a visual trick to get the viewer to see this stuff as being closer, and then of course letting things that are farther away have a thinner line, sometimes almost a muted line. Like I might leave the tree cherry blossoms in a very light pencil-y line, just as my preference. But let's go ahead and get into the shading as I promised. And there's not going to be a whole lot of it to do here, but let's imagine that the light is coming from the upper right, heading towards the lower left, or, more accurately, mostly from the top, with just a little bit of a preference in terms of the light coming more from the right than from the left. And so I'm going in and adding a bit of shading here. I've decided to hold my pencil low to the page and do just a very subtle kind of circling of lines here that creates an area of tone without it being composed of lines. There are lots of different ways. In fact, I've done another video, maybe I'll link at the end, to my video on 3 different ways of adding shading, by which I mean toning, not so much shadow location and placement and so forth. But let's go ahead and use this shading technique to add yet more depth to the hand. And as I said, light coming from above is going to produce shadows on the lower edge, and because we've decided to maybe give a little bit of emphasis of light coming from the right rather than from the left, then you may add a bit more of your shadows correspondingly to the lower left edge of things. Especially on this one, as these objects are turned in space, allowing us to see more of the left-hand side. Our left-hand side always gets confusing. But Mark, it's not her left. That's her, wait a minute, that's her left hand, and then the right-hand side for her is, okay. I think you guys know what I'm trying to say, all right? This lower edge of the thumb is going to get lots of extra shading. And then this whole area down here, which is really kind of the other side of her palm, the back of her hand, can get quite shaded in because there's very little light getting down there. And then you'll see later on, as I carry on to shade the rest of the drawing, that you can also make use of shading to make this pop a little more, right? So you can even, artists will sort of play around with reality even. In this case, it helps us because we know that shadows would naturally fall on this side of her blouse. That we can use that as an added way of making these white fingers pop off the page, right? So see how I'm really kind of going to town, darkening this area right here in particularly dark so that those fingers create that sort of 3D coming at you effect. So, this is tricky stuff, and I do not pretend to be an expert, and someone looking at this may, in fact, say, yeah, it looks a little weird to me, Mark. Guilty as charged. I struggle with these things just like anyone else, and if there's anything about this drawing that is not perfect, my apologies, but I do hope it has helped you a little bit in terms of getting a handle on foreshortening. Well, I'm going to go ahead and in time-lapse finish off the shading, and then we'll be back for a few final words. Alright, well, I'm pretty much done with this illustration, although I noticed a mistake just now that the highlights on the eyes really ought to be on the other side because the light is coming from over here. But hey, we all make mistakes. Forgive me, people. Please, forgive me. And of course, I'm not truly done with this illustration until the compulsion sets in. Must draw blushies. I can't get away now with drawing any character without blushies. They always want to see them there. And of course they symbolize embarrassment or shyness. I don't know why she's so shy and embarrassed. Maybe it's, I know, it's because it's the first time that she has ever gone prancing across the cherry blossom fields with a complete stranger that she met by reaching her hand out of a YouTube video. I think it's time to wind this one down. I want to go ahead and thank all of you who have supported me by getting my graphic novel series. We got Brody's Ghost, that's book 3, just out. Miki Falls, all 4 of them have been out for a while. And finally, Mastering Manga, my How to Draw book out there. Thank you so much for your support, for getting the books, for subscribing, for commenting. I really do greatly appreciate all of your support. I'm going to go ahead and lay down this pencil, though. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.